so that they can listen to his words, experience his touch, be filled with hope, and be healed.
In recent times, the rapid rise of artificial intelligence and its applications in media manipulation have introduced a new dimension of complexity into public discourse. One of the most striking examples of this emerging phenomenon was the circulation of a fabricated narrative claiming that Pope Leo XIV was furious about statements allegedly made by Ibrahim Traoré, the transitional president of Burkina Faso, concerning the Vatican. The narrative, which gained traction online in 2025, revolved around a supposed confrontation or sharp criticism exchanged between the newly elected Pope and Burkinabe leader. However, upon closer examination, it becomes clear that no such event or statement ever took place, and the entire controversy was born out of sophisticated deepfake video and the viral amplification of misinformation. This essay will examine the origins of this false claim, the technological and political context in which it emerged, the response of the Vatican, and the broader implications of such fabrications for truth, diplomacy, and public trust. The origins of the claim can be traced to a 36-minute video that surfaced on YouTube and various social media platforms. The video, titled Pope Leo XIV Responds to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a message of truth, justice, and reconciliation, purported to show the pontiff delivering an impassioned message directly addressing Traoré and his leadership, using manipulated footage from a genuine papal audience held on May 12, 2025. The creators of the video employed deepfake techniques to synchronize artificial voiceovers and lip movements, creating the illusion that Pope Leo XIV was making statements he never uttered. The message, which appeared to criticize certain political or religious positions in Burkina Faso, was framed in a way that suggested papal discontent, and this framing gave rise to claims that the Pope was furious with Traoré. The fact that this fabrication was able to spread so widely points to the potency of deepfake technology in the current media environment. Deepfakes leverage artificial intelligence, particularly generative adversarial networks, GNs, to alter audiovisual materials so convincingly that even trained observers can find it difficult to distinguish between authentic and manipulated content. In this case, the manipulation was aided by the fact that the footage used was genuine in its original form. Pope Leo XIV had indeed held an audience on that date, and his gestures, setting, and demeanor were all authentic. Only the audio track and the synchronization of his lip movements were altered. This subtle but powerful alteration transformed a benign papal appearance into the cornerstone of a narrative that never happened. The Vatican responded swiftly once the video began to circulate. Through official channels such as Vatican News, the Secretary of State, and L'Osservatore Romano, it issued statements denouncing the video as fabricated and warning the public about the dangers of artificial intelligence-generated misinformation. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, reiterated that all official papal communications are documented and archived through established channels, primarily the Vatican website, Vatican TV, and its affiliated news outlets. He emphasized that the so-called message had no basis in fact, and that Pope Leo XIV had never made any such remarks regarding Ibrahim Traoré or the political situation in Burkina Faso. It is important to note that at the time the video emerged, the Vatican's actual relationship with Burkina Faso was not one of conflict, but rather one of cautious diplomatic engagement. In February 2025, the Burkinabe president was received an audience by Cardinal Parolin, where discussions centered on peace building, humanitarian support, and the challenges of instability in the Sahel region. There was no record of any acrimony or papal anger. On the contrary, the Vatican expressed support for efforts to stabilize the country and promote dialogue between various factions. Thus, the narrative that Pope Leo XIV was furious with Traoré is not only unsupported by evidence, but also runs counter to the documented diplomatic tone between the two entities. The question then arises, why would such a video be created, and who stands to benefit from its circulation? Analysts of disinformation campaigns have pointed out that fabrications targeting religious figures, particularly the Pope, can have far-reaching consequences in regions where religious affiliation and political legitimacy are intertwined. In West Africa, where both Islam and Christianity play significant roles in shaping social narratives, a manufactured rift between the Catholic Church and a national leader can serve as a catalyst for unrest, mistrust, or even violence. Furthermore, Pope Leo XIV being relatively new to the papacy in 2025, was already under the spotlight as a reformist figure, making him an attractive target for those seeking to undermine his credibility or stir controversies in his name. Ibrahim Traoré, for his part, has been portrayed in varying lights across international media. Rising to prominence after leading a coup in Burkina Faso, he positioned himself as a nationalist and anti-imperialist figure, at times critical of Western institutions and their perceived influence in the Sahel. This reputation may have made him a convenient counterpart in a fabricated story that sought to pit him against one of the most globally recognized Western religious authorities. Yet there is no record of Traoré making any statement that would warrant papal condemnation, and certainly no direct confrontation occurred. The fabrication's impact, however, did not end with its initial release. Social media algorithms, designed to amplify emotionally charged and controversial content, played a significant role in spreading the video beyond its original context. Many users, unaware of its dubious origins, shared it as evidence of rising tensions between the Vatican and African leaders. Comment sections and online forums became fertile ground for further speculation, with some users creating additional layers of falsehood by claiming inside knowledge of supposed Vatican displeasure. These dynamics illustrate how deepfakes, once released, can generate secondary waves of misinformation as individuals interpret, debate, and embellish the original falsehood. The Vatican's strategy to counteract the video involved not only public statements, but also collaboration with independent fact-checkers and media organizations. Outlets such as Deutsche Welle DW, Agence France Presse AFP, and Catholic Sun conducted their own investigations, tracing the origins of the footage and comparing it with authentic Vatican archives. These fact-checking efforts were crucial in restoring a measure of truth to the conversation. DW, for instance, explicitly labeled the video as fake and pointed out the telltale signs of manipulation, including inconsistencies in the audio quality and the absence of any official transcript matching the alleged speech. AFP provided a detailed breakdown of how the footage had been repurposed and urged media consumers to rely on verified channels for papal communications. This episode is not merely an isolated case of fake news. It reflects a broader trend in the digital age where the boundary between reality and fabrication is increasingly porous. The case of the fabricated fury of Pope Leo XIV demonstrates how easily narratives can be attributed to. The controversy over the fabricated video involving Pope Leo XIV and Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not arise in a vacuum. It reflects deeper currents in both global politics and the evolving media landscape. To understand why such a narrative gained traction and why it resonated so powerfully in some circles, it is essential to examine the interplay between regional tensions in Africa, the symbolism of the papacy, and the capabilities of modern disinformation tools. Burkina Faso, under the transitional leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, has been navigating a tumultuous period marked by security challenges, economic instability, and shifting alliances. Since assuming power in 2022, Traoré has sought to position himself as a champion of African sovereignty, distancing the country from traditional Western influences and forging closer ties with alternative partners, including Russia and other emerging players in the Sahel. His rhetoric often includes criticism of colonial legacies, perceived foreign interference, and what he describes as exploitative structures imposed by the West. This stance has earned him both ardent supporters, who see him as a symbol of resistance, and detractors, who accuse him of undermining democratic institutions and stoking anti-Western sentiment. Against this backdrop, the Vatican represents not merely a religious authority, but also, in the eyes of many, a historical and geopolitical actor. The Catholic Church has a long-standing presence in West Africa, dating back to the missionary movements of the 19th and 20th centuries. It runs schools, hospitals, and social services that serve millions, but its history is also entwined with European colonial powers that once ruled the region. As such, any perceived criticism from the Pope toward a nationalist African leader is easily interpreted through the lens of colonial memory and post-colonial politics. Conversely, any fabricated accusation of papal anger can be weaponized to stoke nationalist fervor or anti-Western sentiment. The timing of the deepfake video's release was also significant. In 2025, Pope Leo XIV was still consolidating his papacy following his election earlier that year. His initial months in office were marked by a commitment to dialogue, social justice, and technological ethics. He had spoken publicly about the promises and perils of artificial intelligence, warning of its potential to spread falsehood and harm. Ironically, this very warning became prophetic as he became the target of one of the most elaborate deepfake campaigns involving the papacy to date. Disinformation actors often target moments of transition or uncertainty, when public attention is heightened and institutions are perceived as vulnerable. The video's creators, whoever they may have been, demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both technical manipulation and narrative framing. By using authentic footage of the Pope and embedding the fabricated message within the recognizable setting of a Vatican audience, they ensured that the content would appear plausible at first glance. The use of a conciliatory yet firm tone in the synthetic speech made it sound like a genuine papal message, not an overt attack, which increased the shareability among audiences looking for confirmation of pre-existing beliefs rather than sensational scandal. One of the more insidious aspects of the video was its exploitation of the Catholic Church's global visibility. The Pope, as the head of the Catholic Church, is one of the most recognizable and quoted figures on earth. His words, whether in encyclicals, interviews, or brief remarks, often carry weight far beyond the boundaries of Catholicism. A single fabricated statement attributed to him can ripple across continents, influencing not only religious discourse, but also political debates, international relations, and interfaith dynamics. Thus, even without any direct involvement from the Pope or the Vatican in the affairs of Burkina Faso, the mere suggestion of papal displeasure could have consequences on local public opinion, potentially affecting the treatment of Catholic institutions or the perception of Western alliances. The Vatican's prompt denunciation of the deepfake was both necessary and strategically wise. Historically, the papacy has sometimes been slow to respond to rumors or falsehoods, preferring silence to avoid lending them credibility. In the digital age, however, delay can be costly, as falsehoods spread exponentially faster than corrections. By acting swiftly, Vatican news and related channels were able to issue clarifications before the narrative became too entrenched. They also reminded the faithful and the broader public of the proper channels through which authentic papal communications are disseminated, namely, official transcripts, recordings, and news bulletins that are archived on Vatican VA and its affiliates. Nevertheless, even with rapid response, the deepfake left a residue of confusion. Social media platforms were flooded with comments and reposts that often stripped away the context of the Vatican's correction. Some users insisted that the correction itself was an attempt to cover up the truth, illustrating the paradox of modern disinformation. Once a lie is seeded, attempts to refute it can sometimes reinforce belief among those already predisposed to distrust official sources. This phenomenon, well documented by psychologists as the backfire effect, complicates efforts to restore truth in polarized environments. Beyond its immediate impact, the fabricated clash between Pope Leo XIV and Ibrahim Traoré raises broader questions about the regulation and accountability of digital platforms that host such content. Should platforms be held responsible for the rapid dissemination of deepfakes? Should there be stricter verification protocols for videos that claim to feature heads of state or religious leaders? Some advocates argue for watermarking authentic communications using blockchain or cryptographic signatures, so that any unverified footage can be easily identified as suspect. Others caution against overregulation, warning that heavy-handed controls could stifle legitimate dissent or citizen journalism. The role of media literacy cannot be overstated in this context. Citizens equipped with basic skills in source verification, reverse image search, and critical consumption of online content are far less likely to fall prey to fabrications. Educational initiatives, whether in schools, churches, or community organizations, are increasingly being recognized as a frontline defense against the weaponization of deepfakes. The Vatican, in its pastoral communications following the incident, emphasized this point, encouraging Catholics worldwide to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves when encountering controversial content online. Another notable dimension of this episode is the interplay between African politics and the global Catholic Church. While the deepfake was debunked, it still highlighted the sensitivities around how African leaders are portrayed by Western or Western-associated institutions. Traoré's government, though not officially commenting on the video, benefited indirectly from a narrative among some segments of the population who saw it as evidence of his defiance against perceived external interference. This dynamic reveals a paradox. Even false narratives can have real political consequences when they align with existing sentiments or strategic needs. From the perspective of